Mark Thiessen is a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush. Where was it? Where was the mea culpa, the come to Jesus, the acknowledgement that he misled millions of people in this country, who now 4.2 million of which so far have been kicked off of their plans contrary to his direct promise. Instead, he's talking about how it's like having a great product in the store and just can't get in to buy it.
Yeah, where was the statement, "I'm sorry I misled you"? That's what was missing in the speech. And look, if you go to the White House website today, it still says, if you like your health insurance you can keep it, period. It's on the White House website right now if you go to the White House website. They have not acknowledged the basic fact that this administration misled the American people. And so when he goes out and says all these things, nobody's listening. There's a crisis of credibility. Nobody's going to listen to a word he says until he comes out and tells the American people, "I misled you. What I said was inaccurate. I'm sorry. Let's move on." He
is not doing it. He's not doing it so far. I don't know why we have that, but you can take that off because it's distracting. His favorability is dropping. His job approval is dropping. And the favorability is key because all along, despite several scandals and so on, the IRS, Benghazi, people still liked him. For the first time this week, we saw that's changing now. More people dislike than like. Job approval dropping. And the question is, can the man who promised to have the most transparent administration ever get away with this, Mark?
He can't. And look, people don't like being lied to. Even when the President of the United States says to you, you can keep your health plan no matter what, period, and it turns out that he knew that wasn't true, then they're not going to give you a second chance until you fess up. And so by dragging this out, he's making it worse for himself. The cover-up is always worse than the original scandal.
Okay, but as somebody who used to traffic in presidential language, how can he do it? Lanny Davis is coming up later in the hour. He's going to say that he thinks the president should come out and say, look, American people, I oversimplified it. I oversimplified it. But can he do that? Because you and I have been discussing your belief for a couple of days now, that it wasn't a matter of oversimplification, that he had to do this. He had to mislead because the plan all along was to devastate the individual insurance market, because guess who's in it? You tell the people.
The healthy people who don't use a lot of services. And so they need those people to move into the exchanges in order to subsidize the poor and the sick. So they needed this. This was planned from the beginning. This was part of it. And they wrote the regulations to ensure that the vast majority of plans in the individual market and the small group market wouldn't qualify for grandfathering. So this was part of the plan. But look, the problem is there's nothing he can say that changes this until the facts on the ground change. That when millions of Americans are losing their health insurance, it doesn't matter what the President of the United States says. You know, I worked for President Bush during the Iraq War in 2006, and we would go and give speeches all the time talking about how our strategy was working and the troops on the ground and the morale was great. But it didn't mesh with what people saw on their TV screens. It was only when the strategy changed, and we changed the strategy and acknowledged that we were mistaken, and we did something different, that the numbers started moving. Until this changes, the reality on the ground changes, nothing's going to change for the president.
The one thing that is changing in Washington is the dynamic among the Democrats who voted for this law, especially in the wake of the tight race in Virginia, the unexpectedly tight race at the last minute, which came down to Obamacare and people's dislike for it. Now we find out today that in a meeting that was not scheduled, it was not publicly announced, the president called in all of these top Democrats who are running for re-election in the Senate, and the very dozen who voted for this law went in and met with the president tonight, and they had a spicy conversation about politics. Mark, how does this play now? What are these dozen going to do?
Well, they're in big trouble because, look, the reality is the president needs to admit that he knew, but the Democrats knew as well. And it's not just their vote on Obamacare. You know, they're all, Mary Landrieu and all these other senators are going out there, and Shaheen from New Hampshire, they're going out saying they're shocked that millions of people are losing their health insurance. And we didn't know this was going to happen. We were told that people would be able to keep their plans. Not only did they know that millions of people would lose their plans, they voted to kill legislation that would have saved their plans. You had Mike Enzi on here the other night. 3 years ago, he went out on the Senate floor and said millions of people are going to lose their plans because of these regulations, and he offered a bill that would have saved their plans, and every single Democrat voted no.
Yeah, they accused him of fear-mongering, and now he's been proven right. Mark, thank you.
He has been. Thank you, Megyn.